to Talking SEC Football with the Daily Journal sports staff. I'm joined by sports editor John Pitts and MSU beat writer Logan Lowery, and I'm going to throw it to John right now.
Thank you, Parrish. You know, I'm a little puzzled about what we should talk about today. It's kind of a slow week here in Mississippi. I don't know, not much going on the football front. No, actually, I think we've called this football Mageddon, to use a cute term. It's by just about any measure we can come up with, the biggest weekend, the biggest one day of football for Ole Miss and Mississippi State. It's the kind of thing where sports writers are trying to get their arms around it. Some of our national media friends are coming to town, and they've got to break out the Faulkner and the dictionary and the history lessons to try to put all this into context. Hey, just for fun, let's mostly talk about actual football and sports here for about a half an hour. Logan, I'm going to start with you because the first game of the day on Saturday will be Mississippi State and Texas A&M. What's been the buzz around campus? Had a week off, probably needed it to start to try to grapple with what A&M's going to try to do, and what's the general feeling around campus, and is there concern about keeping focus after 2 weeks of everybody telling the Mississippi State kids that they have reinvented sliced bread on the football?
Yeah, I think that's you can kind of hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it's been 2 weeks of the players been patted on the back, and you can't even hardly turn on ESPN or anything like that without seeing something about Mississippi State and their big win over LSU a couple of weeks ago. But at the same time, that was just one of the big stretch of 3 top 10 games that Mississippi State has. So they've got to get back ready because Texas A&M and Auburn are both ranked higher than LSU are. And anytime you look at Texas A&M's offense, it's scored 51 points a game. It's leading the conference in yards per game. So they've been throwing the ball exceptionally well, and that's kind of Mississippi State's weakness is in their secondary. They've given up a lot of long pass plays. I think 5 of the 7 touchdowns Mississippi State's given up this year have all been through the air, and they've all been on passes of 30 yards or more. 3 of those passes were 75, 81, and 88 yards. So Mississippi State has a lot to prepare for that Texas A&M offense, and probably it's going to take those 2 weeks to prepare for it and see if they can kind of hold it in check, because nobody else has been able to.
So, Logan, kind of what
I
you're
was
saying
struck
there,
by. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Logan, it sounds like you're saying Kevin Sumlin's not going to wrestle with the decision of when to put in the passing quarterback.
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, that was so good, Logan is frozen.
I think he's back, maybe. I was going to say I was struck by the fact that something I read this week that talked about the weaknesses of all the teams in the league, and it seemed like to me this A&M game actually exposes 2 weaknesses, the Mississippi State secondary and the question of what Texas A&M can do against the running game, and both those are going to be issues, it seems like to me.
You know, I watched a good bit of the Texas A&M and Arkansas game from the press box prior to the Ole Miss-Memphis game last week. I thought as exciting as that game was, it looked to me like down the stretch both of those teams, Arkansas and Texas A&M, I thought had trouble tackling. Had at least making open field tackles. That's not easy to do, but if you're going to stop big plays, you got to do it. I thought both of those teams struggle with that a little bit.
I think so. Logan, have we lost him, or is he back with us?
Well, I see his picture.
It's like real live television here.
That's right. We can put this in our bloopers file, and we can when we we'll have a best of one week.
Like Dave Garraway and the monkey on the set of the Today Show back in the 50s, I guess.
Yeah.
Logan has joined this video call, it says. Let's see if he's going to pop up. In the meantime, there you are.
Yeah, we're having a thunderstorm here in Starkville, and Yeah, my MetroCast internet isn't the greatest in the world.
That's right. I tell you what, we could all get a dig in about the providers. I've made 2 trips to Comcast this week.
Logan, let's go back to you for a second. I was struck in something I read this week about not the question of strength on strength, but the question of weakness on weakness, which would be Mississippi State running the ball against the Texas A&M team in the Mississippi State secondary. In your opinion, which will be more important or more crucial to the outcome? Where is the bigger Achilles heel?
I think it's in Mississippi State secondary because when you have teams like UAB, who's not exactly a world beater on offense, passing on you like they did a few weeks ago, Mississippi State's got some holes in their secondary. Those passes were there to be made in the South Alabama game. LSU came in and threw the ball and scored their touchdowns on long touchdown passes late in that ball game. So Mississippi State's secondary is kind of the most vulnerable point of their team. So anytime you've got the top-rated passing offense versus the lowest-rated pass defense in the league, I think that's a key matchup to kind of keep an eye on Saturday.
Parrish, I thought that Mississippi State got punked a little bit by UAB. There was a lot of talk going into that game about the UAB running attack, and they come out throwing the ball all over. Now we're all talking about how efficient Alabama is at throwing the football, and Amari Cooper is a Heisman Trophy candidate. What are the odds of Nick Saban coming out heavy against Ole Miss and saying, okay, first thing we're going to do for about 2 quarters here is just pound you upside the head with that running game, sort of the way we like to do it before Lane Kiffin got here, or do you think they'll pull out the stops from the get-go?
Well, that's a good question, John. I tell you what, I don't think, I think that Lane Kiffin is running that offense, so it's going to be a little bit different there. But at the same time, well, hold on. Sports editor John Pitts, MSU beat writer Logan Lowery. I'm going to throw it to John.
Just bounced it off the satellite there, I think. It's just now coming back in.
Puzzled about what we should talk about today. It's kind of a slow week.
I don't know where that's coming from, guys, or how to stop it.
Not much going on.
Can you mute your speaker?
No, actually.
Yeah, but can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
I can hear you.
I can mute the speaker, but I can't hear you.
Ah.
It's by just about any measure we can compass the weekend, the biggest one day of football.
Well, that's a puzzle.
Y'all carry on. Let me look at some stuff here.
All right, Logan, while he's talking about that for a second, what's the buzz on the recruiting side in Starkville? I know in both places it looks like it's going to be a big weekend for recruiting.
On Saturday.
Well, we'll see a lot of recruits say they'll come on Saturday, and then the reality kind of hits after their Friday night football games that, hey, we got to get up awful early that next morning and travel over to Starkville for an 11 a.m. game. So some of those guys that have said they're coming probably won't show. But at the same time, you've had a lot of response from a lot of big-name guys, a lot of 4- and even some 5-star guys say they'll be in Starkville on Saturday. And I think that's a credit to the job that Mississippi State's done on the recruiting front. They really don't have a whole lot of scholarships left to give out, so they'd like to hold on to those few scholarships remaining to give out to some of those big name players that are still left kind of on their big board. So that's kind of what they're going to go with, and see if they can get some of those guys reeled in this weekend with a big win.
I wonder if there'll be any guys make a big show of being in Starkville in the first half and then kind of looking at their watches and saying, yeah, we'd probably get to Oxford here if we went on, got in the car and got out of here.
Yeah, you see that a lot, especially during the summer camp session. Mississippi State always has their big invitation-only camp in late July, and then usually Ole Miss's is the following morning. So you'll see a lot of guys, leave out of Mississippi State's camp, maybe even duck out, an hour or so early drive up to Oxford to spend the night to try to get up for their early morning camp. But it's tough to do. I've seen a few recruits do it, but it's tough to do, on a football Saturday. I even did it one time. I covered a Ole Miss Florida game back when Tim Tebow was up there. They had an early morning game, and then Mississippi State played a game against Gardner Webb later that evening. So I went and covered both games, and I probably won't do that anytime soon. That was tough to do.
Well, John, I'm back.
I understand. Parrish, yay!
Yeah, I don't. I wish I could tell you I knew how that earlier recording went away, but I don't. But it's gone away. So we'll see. Maybe that's the hand of Robbie Ward in the background somewhere.
When all else fails, reverse the polarity. That's what that's always my first trick to try. Let's go back to you then, and I'll ask you the same question I led with Logan. The buzz is deafening from Oxford, no question about it, with game day coming and the two highest-ranked teams in the country that'll be playing on what's already a big Saturday. Even if these two SEC West battles weren't on the plate, it would be a big Saturday. What's the buzz, and what leads people in the Ole Miss camp to think that this can be different from some previous Ole Miss-Alabama games that we've seen?
Well, I think the buzz is that Ole Miss has a better chance to compete in this game, and I think they do. I think there's more talent in the program. I think they are deeper, although some of that depth took a hit earlier this week when Anthony Alford, no relation, left the team to pursue his professional baseball career with the Toronto organization. So all of a sudden they're pretty inexperienced right behind Trey Elston at Rover. They've got a freshman in C.J. Moore and a sophomore in David Kamara, neither of whom have played very much beyond special teams. But that's not the picture for this entire Ole Miss defense. They play a lot of defensive linemen. They play a lot of linebackers. Got a lot of experience. They have withstood the injury to a key signee, junior college transfer T. Shepard, because they've gotten strong play from their cornerbacks, Sinquez Golson and Mike Hilton. Cliff Coleman, a kind of a journeyman in the program, has come on and is playing well as a senior. And you got a freshman making some plays. They've got a lot of depth on defense. I mean, that's what looks different about this team. And we were talking earlier about will Alabama come out and go to Amari Cooper earlier, or would they try to run the ball? That's a good question. I mean, Ole Miss has been somewhat susceptible to the run until last week. They were really dominant against a Memphis team that's been pretty good, even against some better competition in UCLA. I think it would be better for Ole Miss if they had more than just the Memphis game to kind of build some momentum in that department. Lafayette, Vanderbilt, Boise all had periods of success, periods of time where they ran the ball well as Ole Miss. So, and I know Alabama ran for 254 yards with the same players last year. They may come out and try to establish that run early.
I think this is as good a time as any to swing it through to both of you and ask you to talk about the game specific. In our game day edition, we asked both of you to predict the score. Don't want you to give that away, but why don't you each for a couple minutes? I'll start with you, Parrish, and then Logan, you can pick it up. How do you think the game plays out? What would be a score that would be a successful score, or a range of scoring where Ole Miss looks better trying to win 17-14, say, than 45-42? How do you feel like the game plays out?
Well, I don't think Ole Miss gets into the upper 30s. I don't think they get in the 40s in this game. I think Alabama is too good at stopping the run. Success for Ole Miss in this game, I think, would be if they were a team run the ball for periods of time. I don't think they're going to come up and line up and run the ball up and down the field on this Alabama defense. They're just not going to do it. They don't have to run all night long. They have to run enough to keep the Alabama defense honest. And if they can do that, and if they can protect Bo Wallace a little bit, and they've done a good job of that this year, then Bo Wallace will make some plays in the secondary. Alabama in the secondary has given up some plays there. And I think Bo Wallace, it's interesting to compare the two elite receivers in this game, Amari Cooper from Alabama and Laquan Treadwell from Ole Miss. Alabama it's no secret that they're going to Cooper as often as they can. He's got 43 catches this year, and that's like 30 catches more than the next guy in their receiving. So they're going to Amari Cooper. Ole Miss, on the other hand, has been very content to take what opposing defenses have given with their strategy regarding Treadwell, and that's meant a lot of throws to Cody Core and Vince Sanders and tight end Evan Ingram, and all three of those guys have responded. It's been a very good supporting cast around Treadwell, and Treadwell showed up last week in the Memphis game with more explosive plays, 5 catches, 123 yards. So I think it's an interesting matchup of two elite receivers, and I think Alabama will test that run defense early.
Well, in my game, I really think it's going to be another shootout. Look at last Texas A&M kind of won that shootout, 51-41, jumped out to a pretty sizable lead. I think it was 34-10. Texas A&M jumped out to last year, and Mississippi State kind of played catch up the rest of that ball game. I think Mississippi State will start scoring a little earlier than often, even though Texas A&M's defense is a little more, especially with their pass rush. But I really think it may be one of those games that whoever has the ball last wins that game. And I think it's going to be a close battle, but I think it's also going to be a high-scoring battle. And Mississippi State doesn't have the greatest track record of outscoring teams, but over the last 5 games, Mississippi State's rolled up over 500 yards of offense. They've put up some pretty big numbers so far this year. In fact, they're on pace to shatter the school record for points scored this season. I think they have 165 points through their first 4 games, and they've scored on the opening drive in 3 of their 4 games. So Mississippi State's gotten their offense off to a good start, and they're going to need that and probably score just about every possession on Saturday to kind of keep pace with Texas A&M. Dan Mullen was asked earlier this week what he thought would be the best scenario for Mississippi State, a low-scoring game, or did he think it would be another shootout? He said he just didn't. This game would be low-scoring at all. Offenses, there's just too much talent on the field and too much explosiveness, and I really think it's going to test both defenses, and probably going to come down to either turnover battle or just basically who has the ball last.
Are you with us, Logan?
I think John's the one. I'm here.
I think Cleveland had said so much good about this week that I decided to look ahead and talk about where we might be moving. And the fact of the matter is, if Ole Miss and State were both to win on Saturday, to begin with, we probably can't print enough papers for people that will want to buy them at that point. But you're looking at a couple of enormous games next week, if that's the case. And if they lose, those are enormous games as well. Mississippi State still home, got Auburn coming in, an Auburn team that has to play LSU this weekend. And what I think is kind of an underrated matchup, because if LSU loses another conference game, they're really in desperate straits, and the drumbeat of Les Miles to Michigan can get really loud. But then Ole Miss got to go to Texas A&M, going to have to play out there, face off against the 12th man. It is fascinating to me that as big as this week, State were able to come away with wins at home, they would surely both be top 10 teams next week, and that just seems to me to turn the dial up on expectations and the hype around both of these programs. Parrish, I'll start with you. Take me through the win or lose scenarios and where Ole Miss would be next week as they head to Texas A&M, whatever the result this weekend.
Well, I tell you what, if they win and go in as a top 10, then that's just more attention and more momentum for the program. right now. I'll tell you, John, when we talk about football Mageddon here, and we've kind of coined that hashtag, I did a search for it earlier in the week, and it got a lot of, it's getting a lot of play, a lot of talk, a lot of response there on Twitter, and that's good. But football Mageddon, even if State and Ole Miss were both to win on Saturday, is nothing more than a footnote to the season if these teams don't continue to win. If they both win on this very special day in Mississippi on Saturday, but they both end up with only 8 regular season wins or maybe 9, and they don't capitalize on enormous victories, then, you know, we've seen Mississippi teams win 8, 9 games, not nearly enough, but that has happened. I mean, you know, to really capitalize on football Mageddon, you have to win, and then you have to win going forward. And frankly, you know, it's, you know, we've talked about the daunting task that is the SEC West. Now, if Ole Miss wins the game, you know, they go into Texas A&M, where I just think we're going to find out a lot more about this Ole Miss defense this Saturday against Alabama. I think they're pretty good. I think they have a chance to go into College Station and put their offense in position to win. Texas A&M didn't score 51 points against Arkansas. They scored 28 in regulation. You know, that's a winning effort by the defense. I think, you know, you have to count on your offense to be able to score at least that much when you're playing an offense talented and diverse as Texas A&M is. But your defense, you hold them below 30, you're giving your offense a chance.
Logan?
Yeah, I think, you know, if Mississippi State wins this week and Auburn is able to defeat LSU, then I think it sets up an even bigger matchup than what Mississippi State has this week. I think Mississippi State has a chance to have the premier game in college football next week, and it's probably an occasion where game day takes a look at Starkville next week. So there could be back-to-back weekends where we see game day in the state of Mississippi. I know there are a lot of other factors that go into it as opposed to just having the marquee matchup. I know that they probably would like to spread the love around some too, but at the same time, you know, they're making their first appearance in Oxford this week. They've never been to Starkville, so it would be some first time for that too. But you know, outside of I guess off the field things that you have, you know, Mississippi State, you know, playing a team like Auburn. It's a team that Mississippi State has played close, you know, several times under Dan Mullen, and they've only gotten the job done one time. I mean, they should have won probably 3 of the 5 matchups, maybe even 4 of the matchups against Auburn, but they've only won 1 of them. They found a way to come up short in all those games. You know, you remember Chris Relf getting stopped at the goal line there at Auburn a few years ago, and just they played that game so well against Cam Newton in his only year there at Auburn. Should have won that game. You know, Auburn kind of pulled out the same magic that they used a year ago. But yeah, Mississippi State's got to find a way to keep their offense clicking the way that it is, and also the defense. The defense has leads the conference with 34 tackles per loss. That's 5th in the country. They've been just lights out against the run. Like we talked about, you know, how vulnerable their pass defense is, but it's been that, as bad as it has been against the pass, it's been that good against the run, and it doesn't really set up well for a team like Texas A&M that throws the ball so well. But Auburn loves to run that football, especially with, you know, the backs that they have and Nick Marshall. They've kind of spread it out. You know, Marshall's developed a little bit as a quarterback, throwing the ball a little bit more so this year than last, but. It would create a huge matchup for Mississippi State next week if both teams are able to win this week.
Parrish, I'm going to swing back to you for a second. While you were down, Logan and I were talking about recruiting. How does this recruiting weekend shape up in Oxford? I hear a lot of talk about kids flocking to the state this week, or in-state kids flocking to one side or the other, or maybe both. To take a look at the hoopla surrounding these games. What's the level of expectation about recruit visits in Oxford this weekend?
Well, you know, they're going to have a lot of recruits coming in. I don't want to mess up the names here, but I know they're looking at they've got some positions of need coming in. And the big thing here is, you know, you have such an opportunity by having all of the attention this week, game day, all of that. But if if you take this weekend, you take this scenario, and you win, you know, it just multiplies more and more. I mean, in the hearts and minds of the guys you're trying to persuade to come. I mean, the atmosphere is going to be phenomenal from the beginning. But if you win this game and the 63,000, 2,000, whatever, whoever's there, you know, all those people are there at the end, just like the beginning, and at the end they are standing and cheering, and you've created that kind of atmosphere. You know, that's implanted in the minds of these recruits. I mean, you know, look, it's going to be festive. It's going to be electric before the game. You know, if you're Ole Miss, you want to make sure that it's that way when the clock is at zero. That's what you're selling. You know, everybody has facilities. You know, Ole Miss likes to sell family and relationship, and they'll do a good job of that. They'll work hard at that. But at the end of the day, you're going to make up a lot of ground with guys if you have this type of opportunity and you win.
Parrish, I'm going to go back to Logan, and then I'll come back to you again. But Logan, I'm taking Dak Prescott and McKinney, the linebacker, off the list of responses that you can give me. Tell me the two players whose roles are most crucial on Saturday against Texas A&M. Who most has to succeed, maybe one on offense, one on defense, in order for Mississippi State to be a winner on Saturday?
Well, I'm going to kind of go off the grid a little bit there. I mean, most people would think I would go with Josh Robinson. You know, he had 197 yards against the LSU and really kind of complements Dak Prescott in the backfield. But I'm going to go with Ben Beckwith, the guy that's moving from right guard over to center and replacing Dylan Day in this offense. And it's his first time to start at center. He started there in the spring game with Dylan Day being hurt. But, you know, I really think that that's going to be a key spot for Mississippi State because they run most of their plays out of the shotgun. He's a guy, you know, he told me he hasn't started in a live football game at center since his junior year of high school at 1A Benton Academy. So that's a big task to go out there on national TV in front of a sold-out stadium to go out there and get every snap right. So I think that's going to be huge for Mississippi State. And a lot of times that's overlooked and that's something that's taken for granted. But me being a high school senior or a high school center, I know how tough that is to get the ball back to the quarterback every single time, and it's a skill. And we'll see if he's mastered that skill with these 2 off weeks that they've had. You know, defense, I'll go with you know, safety Jay Hughes. You know, I think he's the kind of the quarterback of that secondary back there for Mississippi State. I think it's going to be huge for him to get everybody in the right position facing that Texas A&M offense, and you just try to, I guess, maneuver, get everybody in the right position, and also get back there himself and avoid all those deep throws that Mississippi State's been susceptible to during those first few games.
Parrish, I'm going to take Bo Wallace and Treadwell off the list. I'm going to take Kim Dichie off the list. And who are your impact players beyond those guys that everybody's heard of?
I'm going to say on defense it needs to start with Brian Bennett. Okay, he's got some quickness and some size. I mean, you look at the nose tackles for Ole Miss, and you can have some size with Woodrow Hamilton. You have some quickness with Isaac Gross. So there's a better package with both of those elements with Brian Bennett. You know, he's been playing well of late. If he can win a lot of one-on-one battles there, right at the interior of the line, if he can get in the backfield, if they think, oh my goodness, we need to start double teaming there, then you're putting less resources on Robert Kimdichie. You free him up to do even more things for you. I think if Brian Bennett can have a good game, better than good, if he can really be on top of his game, that will help Ole Miss really set a tone there defensively that'll work in their favor. That could really be big for the Rebels if Bennett comes out strong. On offense, I like Cody Core. I think he's gotten off to a good start, but look, we're fixing to find out a lot more about all of these players and all of these teams as the schedule shifts gears. Cody Core and a lot of his teammates have gotten off to a really good start. But, there's no secret that they're going to try and take Laquan Treadwell away. Most teams have done that. If Cody Core can be the receiver that he's been early this season and make big catches and tough catches, just be consistent and dependable, that will help Ole Miss really establish itself on offense. I think the Rebels are going to have trouble running the football, but the passing game has been their MO. It's how they've moved up and down the field. They've gotten good protection for the most part of Wallace. That becomes more difficult this weekend, of course. But if you protect him a little bit, let him look over those receivers, and just let Cody Core. And I'm saying Cody Core, but I'm really thinking the rest of the guys. If they are dependable, make those tough catches like they have been, Ole Miss will be around, will have a chance in the fourth quarter.
Parrish, I think we've lost John, so I think it's just up to me and you to kind of wrap this thing up today.
We're going to take it home. It's been, folks, this is a new project for us, and we're excited to bring this to you every week, and we'll be back, as Arnold Schwarzenegger has said. But a few bugs. We might put this one in the bloopers file and then bring it out for you later. We played around Christmas or something, but we were happy to be with you today, and we'll be back next week. Logan, you have anything to add before we go away?
No, just going to rest up and try to get ready for football Mageddon.
All right, folks, that's it for this edition of Talking SEC Football. Come back and join us next week.